Welcome to LOA Today. I'm Walt Thiessen.
With me today is abundance teacher and money coach, Jody Lynn Craven.
This is your daily dose of happy. We are so happy you decided to join us today.
So Jody Lynn, I was doing a little reading up on our guest today, and his name is Marc Paisant, and let me just give you the highlights of him. He's a certified personal trainer. He's a nutritionist, a strength and conditioning coach. He's a mental health advocate, and he's also a podcast host. And I thought, oh, I got to ask him about that. So I think it's going to be my first question, if it's okay with you. I mean,
yeah,
I'm on this too, right? But I want to find out more about the podcast before we do anything else. So let's bring him on. So Marc, welcome to the program, and how are you doing today?
I'm doing wonderful. Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
And tell us a little bit about the podcast.
So, yes. Relatively Normal is my podcast, and
I love the name.
It's actually, I've had it for a couple years now, and I fell in love with the name because it was one day I was going to a therapy session, and it was just one of those days, kind of like today in nice southern Atlanta, Georgia, where the sun is out, it's gorgeous, not a cloud in the sky, everything is fine. Except in my brain, it wasn't. Like I was, for some reason, I just wasn't in the best mood this day. I felt like there was one cloud and it was raining on me. It was just one of those days where I just wasn't feeling it. And so
you were relatively abnormal that day, is what you're
correct. Yeah. So, and I remember going to my therapist's office, and he kind of could tell, and he was like, "Hey, just tell me, walk me through like what you want." And it kind of caught me by surprise, but I was like, I just want to be normal. Like I want to be just a person who doesn't go through all these things. And he asked me what that looked like to me. And I said, well, the person outside who's happy, the person outside who doesn't have a care in the world. And he said, well, there's nothing abnormal about you. He's like, this is your normal. Like you just have different things you have to learn to cope with. And he's like, normal is relative. And from that moment on, I started the show probably 3 months after that, and I was just doing like the whole movie thing where you're like thinking of names and you're scratching them out, and the pencil's on the tongue and you're scratching that one out, and you put it down. And finally, I just wrote down relatively normal, and I just put the paper down. I was like, yep,
there it is.
Yep, that's it. So that's my platform to kind of just talk about my experiences. I talk to some therapists, some psychologists, some psychiatrists, people who've gone through postpartum, imposter syndrome, things like that. I try to normalize all the things that people are going through, because one of the big things about any type of mental health issues, we feel so alone sometimes. And I just want to make sure people don't feel isolated and alone.
And how long have you been doing the podcast?
It's been, I was on a little hiatus because I was actually doing two. We don't have to talk about that one for another person, but I want to say probably about 7 or 8 years now. So okay. I think I'm close to 200 episodes. Like it's one of those things where there's not a bad part about it. Like I can be in a bad mood before I'm supposed to record, but then once it's all said and done, like I feel like I'm in my zone. Like this is what I was put on the earth to do, is just meet people, talk to them, and give them a platform.
Right. Yeah. I know exactly what you're talking about. I've been doing this one for, this is my 14th year, and I got into it for not exactly the same reason, but kind of the same reason. I went through a crash and burn in 2008. My business got wiped out. Mm-hmm. And then 4 years later, I started the podcast because not only were things not getting better, they're getting worse. So I had to do something about it. Right. But it sounds like you kind of discovered something that I discovered by accident. This stuff is fun.
It is extremely fun. There's a caveat to it, because people will see how fun it is, but there is work to do. There is behind the scenes work, and it involves the editing, the producing, the finding the people to be on the show, having the discipline to not air a show that you think doesn't have the right, values to it. So can be extremely fun, but you can't go into it with the expectation that, one, you're going to have 1 million listeners the first show, and two, that the shows are just going to just organically come out. Like there's work that has to be put into them.
Interesting. A couple things that you said in there. One thing that you talked about was listeners. From the moment that I started the podcast, listeners were the last thing I had in mind, because I was doing the podcast because I needed the help. If listeners came along, great. In fact, when they first came along, I said, what the hell are they doing here? That kind of a thing. But I also love how you're talking about, the work that you go through. You mentioned one thing that I found fascinating. You said having the discipline to not air something if it doesn't really add up. I've done over 2,200 episodes. I have canceled one episode. I'm not sure if I'm not sure I've got that borderline in place there. Yeah.
Well, there's only been two that I haven't, and one probably 15 minutes into it, I was like, "There's no way I can." And I kind of felt bad for the guy because he was a nutritionist and he was really into organic and eating healthy things like that, and he was just going through a really tough spot with both of his parents being sick, his mother having terminal cancer, and he thought my show was the right show to complain that the government was the reason that his mother had cancer.
Oh, I see. Yeah, right.
And and I was like, as much as I feel for him, and I lost a mother because of cancer. Like as much as I empathize with him, like say it somewhere else. Like this isn't the right platform for you to have these conspiracy theories, and I don't want to be associated with that either.
I totally empathize. Actually, mine was a little bit easier to make the decision on because the guy who came onto the show started lambasting my co-host who wasn't there that day. And I just, sorry, you're not allowed to do that.
Nope. Correct. You made the right decision.
It didn't take long. It was an easy decision, actually. Yes. You mentioned that it's a lot of work. That's actually not a lot of work. That was pretty simple. Also, when you said you had to put the work in, I mean, what you described certainly is the work of creating a podcast in the background, but that isn't the work I was thinking about. I thought you were talking about the work we have to do on ourselves as just people living in life. So when you said that, it's like, oh yeah, I forgot there is work involved with the podcast. I hadn't thought about that part. Because you're right, there is work there. But
there is a lot of people see this.
Do a podcast, you got to have done the work yourself, so you know what you're talking about at least.
Correct. Like I think if you were to like go out and randomly ask 100 people on the street about their favorite podcast, people would, throw out, Jay Shetty, or they throw out, I forgot the UFC guy's name who's all over YouTube. The whatever. Dana White. Not Dana White.
Or Joe Rogan.
Yeah, Joe Rogan. Who's hit or miss. Like I don't have anything to say about that, but they'll see those
I like
things.
This part, but I get that.
Yeah, they see those things and they see, oh wow, well, did every other person you talk to is like, oh, I saw this on Joe Rogan's podcast, or my wife, for instance, is like, oh, she sends me Jay Shetty stuff. It's like Jay's. I was like, did you even listen to mine this week? Like, did you like you're sending me Jay's, but you listen to mine? But even in those cases, they have big production teams. It might not look like much, but they have big production teams. They don't have to ask anybody to come on that show. Like people want to be on it. But bring it back to one of your points. I had a friend who attempted to start a podcast, and I think he had a pretty good platform of what he wanted to talk about. But the question he asked me was like, how do you get people to listen or to watch? And I was like, I don't. Like, I don't do this for them. Like, if someone listens, great. If someone wants to sponsor me, great. But the fact of the matter is that I get a platform just to be myself and just to talk things out and have people on and have great, authentic conversations. That's all I really need.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. I remember the first time I got a listener email, I was absolutely floored, just shocked. And I've said this many times, but the first thought that went through my mind was, oh shit, what have I been saying?
Yeah, what did I do wrong? Oh no, who'd I piss off?
Fortunately, it was actually a fan email, which has made it a whole lot easier to read the thing. But it took a while to open it. I was like, "Oh God, do I want to see this?" It's funny how our minds work when we're dealing with this stuff. And of course, Jody Lynn also is a podcaster. She started her own, and she's done this one with me for 5 years now. We've been doing it, something like that. Yeah. Yep. So you know what it's like to do all that, and I know you share the love for doing it the way that I do.
Absolutely.
But I mean, Marc was outlining some of the challenges he's dealt with. What are some of the challenges you dealt with?
I think that the biggest challenges with our YouTube show that a friend of mine and I used to have was the work in the background, the topics of like, what do we talk about next, and like keeping it like alive and exciting for people. And it felt super draining trying to find the followers or to get people to watch it or whatever. And I think that's eventually what killed the spirit of it for us, or for me at least, was just that the drain of all of that other stuff. We were doing it from a place of we wanted to teach the things that we had learned about spirituality and that kind of stuff, and go deeper on those kinds of conversations. And then we got shadow banned pretty frequently. So, it just got discouraging. And then we decided, it was a lot of work and it's a lot of prep and time and everything outside of the actual show. And it was just draining. So we decided to shut her down a couple of years ago.
Okay. Yeah.
But I've kept coming back to this one as a co-host. One, because I don't do any work in the background. And it's a place for me to come. Like, I look at this Wednesday, the hour on Wednesday that I spend with Walt every single week for the last 5 years, literally is my daily dose of happy, and an opportunity to sit and take in other people's thoughts and really reflect about what they've went through and, give my 2 cents along the way, which is fun.
It is fun. Yeah. One of the most amazing things about when you do a podcast is all the different perspectives. We've talked about this a lot, but all the different perspectives that you encounter. Mark, you were talking about that in terms of sometimes, occasionally you get a perspective that just doesn't really work for what you're doing. But most of the time, it sounds like you do have guests on your show fairly frequently. Most of the time, those guests give you perspectives that many of them you probably agree with, but there are many others you probably say, I'm not so sure. And yet they are even more worthwhile in some ways just because you disagree with them.
What I've learned, and I kind of knew this already, but not to the extent I do now. What I learned is that most of us want the same thing. Like, we really want the same thing. The journeys we take are just different. Right. And the ways we say them are different. And, when I've spoken to people regarding physical health and their health journey, whether I talk to runners or strength coaches, or whether I talk to vegans or people who are protein based, whatever, it's so funny. And I've probably said this 100 times on my show, is like, they all go back to the same 3 things. They all go back to, what you're putting in your body, whether that's food or hydration, how much rest you're getting, and how active you're staying. It's like, it doesn't matter like what they're promoting, if they're vegan, if they're protein, if they're whatever, like everybody goes back to the same 3 things all the time. And then you look at some of the mental health stuff, and it's like, they ask you like, well, are you drinking enough water? What does your diet consist of? How much rest are you getting? Are you staying active? And it's like, wait a second, like, we all kind of want the same thing. Perspectives are going to be different. I like I say all the time, I'm glad this world is not full of people who think just like me, because I swear that would be just a weird place to live in. But you're absolutely right. And I've gone in it with the feeling that if something somebody says automatically makes me be devil's advocate, or automatically makes me think differently, I'm going to shut up. I'm not going to say anything. I'm going to do my best to take it in before I try to just defend the way I feel, or try to, show them a different way, because like that, I don't want that to be my shtick. I don't want someone to say, oh, the sky is blue. Well, no. Over here, I see it's purple. It's like, I don't want that to be my shtick. I want someone to be able to say what they need to say, and for me to just take it in and not have to just have a difference of opinion.
I love that. That's really good. Yeah. Now, we got a flavor of how you got started and how you named the podcast. It started on your way to a therapy session, but you also went through some other stuff too that led you into this health field. I mean, you're a personal trainer, but you're also a nutritionist, and you're also a strength and conditioning coach. So it's all stuff related to health, not to mention mental health. So let's talk a little bit about that side of it and how you got into that, because while they certainly fed in, I'm sure at some point to you becoming a podcast host, they also fed into what you end up doing. So let's hear that side of the story.
Yeah. So I was active in sports all through my younger years. My brother and I played soccer and basketball, and we both played soccer at D1 schools. And up until the time I was 21, 22, I always had someone yelling at me to stay in shape. It's like I always had a coach, always had, like, I couldn't be out of shape. And once I graduated from college, all of that went out the window. Like all of it went out the window. I did the normal
and
thing.
the real world is a shock. It really is.
Yeah,
People
it really is. Like, you're absolutely right, because, you know, soccer was my life, and because I have 2 girls that play it now, it's become my life again. It's full circle, but it was my life. And when I turned 22, I absolutely despised it. I didn't want anything to do with it. It had just been eat, sleep, drink soccer for so long. And so I ended up graduating college, getting jobs, not really working out, and the pant sizes just kept creeping up a little bit. And I was like, hey, they still have my size, so I'm still good. And
that's the barometer, isn't it?
It really is.
This works.
It really is. And it got to a point where I was in my late 20s and I was about to get married. And, you know, it's that, you know, people always talk about the biological clock for women, and there is one for men too. Like, we start thinking about fatherhood also. Oh, sure. And I don't think anybody wants to say that, but we do. And I was like, I want to get married. I want to have kids, but I also want to be active with them. I want to be able to, play outside with them. I want to be able to kick the soccer ball, throw the football, all that stuff with them. I don't want to be the dad that's like, after one throw or one catch, I'm have to take a knee, sit down, take a rest, anything like that. So at that moment, I decided to go for a run, and this was a few years before I decided to really get in my fitness journey. But I decided to go for a run, like I had done hundreds of times in my life as a young adult and as a teenager.
All right.
This may have been the longest half a mile I think I've ever run in my life. And I remember running by, and I've told this story before, running by this long bus, and it had the mirrored windows on it. And I remember thinking in my head how great I must look running. And then I looked over at the windows, and my reflection was anything but. Like, I looked tired. I looked just out of shape. My form was horrible. And at that moment on the walk back, where I had to look at the same mirrors, I was like, I'm never going to feel that way about myself again. I'm never going to feel that way about myself again. So that kind of started my running journey. And I ended up losing a good bit of weight doing that. But I had had a foot surgery, so the weight kind of went up and down. I was never very happy with my body image. I could lose all the weight or gain it back or gain muscle. And I never really felt good about myself, regardless if I was, 210 or if I was 320, if I was 260, or if I was whatever number it was. I didn't like myself. And I want people to know this who may be at this place right now, because I remember calling my therapist one day at my office outside of Baltimore, and I was almost in tears because I had gotten to a point where it's like, I feel like I'm in shape. I got married. I bought the house. I have, like, I've checked all the boxes. Like, why am I not happy? Why don't I feel good about myself? And he told me, and he asked me straight up, he was like, hey, did you think losing all the weight would make you feel better mentally? And I was like, well, yes, that's why I did it. Like, yeah, of course. And he said, well, you have to be intentional with both. Like, you can't rely on one to make you feel better about the other. Like, I don't want you to sit here and do, daily affirmations and breathing techniques and yoga and then feel like the physical health will take care of itself. And I don't want you to, be at the gym or go out running and think the mental aspect will take care of it. They have to be done together and both intentional. And that moment, like, I was like, he's absolutely right. Like, I've been doing one and not the other for so long. So probably not even a year later, maybe a little over a year later, I was trying to do both together. And then it finally clicked. I was like, I've been using a therapist for my mental health for so long. What's the equivalent to my physical health? And I said, let me get a personal trainer. I've never had a personal trainer. I've never thought about having one. I've always thought I can get myself in shape myself. I don't need somebody. But I was like, let me get a therapist for my physical health, basically. And that's how I looked at it. And I love the fact that therapist can say things to you that you're afraid to say to yourself. Like they can turn things on you, and the moment you don't want to talk about the relationship you have with your mom, here comes the question. Hey, let's talk about with your mom. The moment you don't think you have a good relationship with your siblings or something, that's when and my trainer would test my limits, not in a bad way, but he would do it in a way where it's like, you have more in you. You have the ability to do more, when I didn't think I did. And at that moment, you know, I was still looking at fitness as like a way to run away from any stress I had, a way to get, like, I'm gonna leave the stress here. I would go for a run on my lunch break, whatever stress I had in the morning, I'd go for a run and run away from it. And what I started doing is I said, you know what? Everything I do at the gym, I'm going to lean into whatever stress I have, whatever things I have going on in the world. I'm not going to separate it. If I had a bad morning, you know, maybe I had an issue at work, or maybe I had a tough conversation with my dad, or maybe something, like, I'm going to go for a run and go to the gym, and I'm going to take care of it there. I'm not going to go there and forget about it or attempt to, because what ended up happening is I would go there, feel pretty good, and come back and be like, oh man, I still got to deal with this. Like I didn't get away from anything. But what happened is I started leaning into my stressors, and I would come back with 3 or 4 different resolution strategies. I'd come back with a feeling refreshed. I'd come back energized. And that's the moment where it all kind of clicked for me, where I was like, okay, I have a therapist for my mental health. I have a therapist for my physical health. And I'm learning to lean into my stress. I want to make sure other people know how to do this. And that was the moment I was like, let me get my certifications. Let me make sure people can understand that they can get through these things. Like, one of the things I do in every training session I have is 0 to 10 is the first question. Where are you at right now mentally, before we even start? And this works great for teenagers and that I work with, because no one ever asks them about where they are mentally. And before every training session, I say 0 to 10, where are you right now? And if it's a 3 or a 4, I can work with that. Like, it might not be as dense, or we might not go as hard, because I want you to start feeling better about yourself. And if it's an 8 or 9, we're going to go hard. Like, that's the moment I know you want to work, and we can get a lot of training in. So that's kind of how, you know, I get both the mental and the physical aspect in there with every training session, because I know where I can empathize from where they are. When a 16 or 17-year-old tells me they're at a 3 or a 4, we know it's not because the stock market crashed. We know that. No. We know it's because a boyfriend was mean to them at school, or the clique didn't invite them over to a party, or they made a bad grade on a test, or a teacher blamed them for something. So that's how I've kind of used that and shaped it into how I can help people when they're training with me.
And do you normally work with young people?
That has become my niche, kind of. So I have a few adults that I've worked with in the past, but I've really I found my calling, because like I think young people really, they're looking for some type of attachment. Like, they're always searching for something, and so many coaches are so hard on them. So many trainers are so hard on them, because people might not know this, or maybe they do. Like, that's what their parents. I can't tell you how many parents have come to me and be like, you can be as mean as you want to my kid. Like, be tough on them. And I'm like, I get where you're coming from, but like, I don't want them to hate coming to work with me, whether I coach them or train them. Like, don't get me wrong. Like, I will hold them accountable, but there's
if you were
way,
helping them become a Division I player, I could perhaps see that.
Yeah. But so the girl I work with this morning, so she is a D1 player over at Portland. So her and I have worked together for 2.5 years, and we've done a lot of cross training. We do specifically soccer training. We've done some conditioning. We've done some speed and agility, and she is one of the hardest workers I've ever been around in my life, and she holds herself accountable. And I know in those situations, I don't have to be the one that forces her to work hard. I have to be more technical. Now, I've worked with the opposite before, where it's like, are you sure you want to be here? Because your parents are paying money for you to be here. But I can't say that out loud, of course. But again, I have to realize my job is sometimes to motivate. My job sometimes is to inspire. I have to help people find things in themselves that they wouldn't find without me. So they may think that they're not good enough, or they're not going to make this team, or why even try. So I have to be the kind of voice of reason in their head to say, hey, listen, like, there's a reason you're here. There's a reason we're together right now. Just do this one thing. Okay, great. Let's just do this second thing. And then by 30, 45 minutes into it, their eyes are kind of opened and they're like, oh, okay. All right. Now I see what I'm capable of.
You're bringing to mind, I have 3 co-hosts. Jody Lynn does the Wednesday show with me, and then I have 2 shows I do on Monday. The evening show I do with a gentleman named Joel Elston from Richmond, Virginia, who has a number of things in common with you. He also is big into doing daily workouts. He works out at the gym every day. He's a big weightlifter. He deadlifts 500 pounds. I mean, this guy's amazing. But he's also been through hell and back, especially in his younger years. And he's also spent a lot of time working with young people. He's a life coach and former therapist. And one of the things that he found was the most valuable when it came to interacting with the kids, especially the ones, he has a tendency to work with kids who are in the foster care system, particularly the ones who are considered unadoptable, maladjusted, nobody can work with them, that kind of thing. He's like the therapist of last resort that the social workers send them to. And he can invariably establish rapport with them because he's been through a lot of the same stuff they have. And that's what I'm about to point to. I mean, he was a gambling addict and ended up living in the streets of Las Vegas, eating out of a dumpster, getting beaten up, all this kind of stuff. And so he has a lot of stories he can tell that somebody who's been in the foster care system can identify with. And he develops rapport that way. So I'm kind of curious. I mean, it sounds like you have a tendency to work with kids on the sports side. I imagine that your sports experience gives you that ability to connect with them in a way that they're going to say, that's meaningful.
I hope so, because, I was, don't get me wrong, like, I was really good at 2 sports. I was really good at soccer, really good at basketball. Like, I was able to play one in college. I could have played the other in college. I decided not to. But at the same time, I wasn't the guy that literally wanted to go home and watch game film. I didn't want to go home and just think about the game or think about the net. Like, I wanted to be a kid. I wanted to be a teenager. I wanted to have a social life. And a lot of people didn't like that about me, especially my coaches didn't like that about me. And, great example is after we had lost, I went to Clemson, we lost in the Elite 8 to Indiana. And to kind of let off steam, we were going to have a party at one of my friends' houses. And I went to the party, and these guys were watching the game film of a game we just played 4 hours ago. And I was just like, nope, I'm out of here. See you guys later. Like, the game, like, don't get me wrong. Like, when I was on the field, on the game, like, I'm working as hard as I can. But I can't be the one that just thinks about this all the time. And I see this now more than ever in athletes where there's an understanding that my pinnacle, my peak could be high school. It could be middle school. It could be club soccer, whatever. If I want to play in college, great. Unfortunately, I was just working with a girl a couple months ago who played in California, played UCLA, and then came and played at Georgia. One of the best athletes I've ever worked with in my life. And a month into our training, she's preparing to go pro. She sends me a text and she's like, hey, I appreciate everything you've done for me. We've had great sessions, but I think this is the end of my career. I think I'm going to focus on being an attorney. And it took me right back to the conversation I had with my coach as a senior when I was like, Coach, I think I'm done. I've lost the love for it. Like I've run my course. And I know every one of the players that I deal with, if we're talking about the sports players I deal with, they're going to get to that spot. They're going to get, whether it's this week, whether it's next year, 5 years, they're going to get to a spot where it's going to be like, I've run my course with this game, with this sport. And I think about that, and I want them to be able to look back and see the training or see the interactions that they had with me and like that makes them want to help the next generation of player. They look back at me and say, you know what? I had such an amazing experience with Marc that I want to make sure other kids feel the way he made me feel when I was working with him. So you're absolutely right. Like, I want people to understand that end of the day, like, sport is sport. Games are games. Should we be disciplined? Should we be motivated? Should we work hard? Of course, all those things. But at the end of the day, like, we're talking about people. We're talking about human interaction. And I never want to be the person that makes someone feel less than, ever. And I want to make sure other people can do the same.
Jody Lynn, as Marc was talking about how he had kind of reached the end of his interest, like he lost the love for it. That really caught my attention, because I mean, you've been through that. We've all been through that in one way or another in various things in our lives, and that's one of those. It's like those milestone moments, I guess you might call them, where you're kind of facing yourself in the mirror, saying, "Who am I? Where am I going? What am I doing next?"
Absolutely. And we can get so wrapped up in, like, wrap up our identity in this one thing, whether it's like work or sport or, a relationship. I think that we have a tendency, especially when we're young, to do those things, gravitate. Like, this is the only thing I do. And I think the beauty of what you're doing, Marc, is teaching all of these really fundamental skills that go along with sports, that are very, very good when you're in sports, but not the only thing that it's good for. Like, the discipline, the showing up early, the staying late, the being able to work as a team, like the being able to connect with other people on a different level where you're not even speaking words in a lot of team sports. There's a lot of skill there that now these young people, they get to bring that to their careers when they're done. But also, I think that there's a lot of people who feel lost when they get to that point of, like, I don't think this is for me. I mean, if they don't have the right coach or the right person in their corner that they could feel safe to talk to about something like that, they might force themselves to keep going down a road that they're not really excited about, that they really don't want to go down, but they feel like, oh, I put in all this work and all this time and effort, and everybody's counting on me to go and do this. I think that can be a really unnerving place to be, especially when you're a kid and you don't want to let people down.
I love that you brought that up, because so my two girls, they're 12 and 11, and my 12-year-old, she's a goalkeeper like I was, and she honestly has the potential to be a really, really good goalkeeper. Like, she's already the best goalkeeper in her club, maybe in the state in a year or two. Like, she just switched clubs, but she also she got over she broke her arm a few months ago, and like, it couldn't have been worse timing or best timing, depending on how you look at it, because she had just, like, I was just noticing her starting to get it. Like, it really started to click. Like, she played one of the best 2 weeks of her young career. Like, she had basically, won a couple games for her team. She was preparing to go to Spain to play, soccer there with a team. And a week before, she breaks her arm. Just freak thing. She actually saves the shot, hits her in the arm, and breaks it clean break.
Wow.
And she took it like a champ. But I remember the orthopedic that she dealt with, and it turns out, the, like, 6 degrees of separation. We had probably played against each other in soccer when we were younger, and he knew the same people I did, and we were starting to talk. But he told her one thing. He said, "Listen, you're going to be out for a couple months, but he's like, this is the time you get to figure out other things that you like to do." He's like, I know you're good. Your dad tells me you're good. I hear that you're good, but there's so many girls who are as good as you that they don't play soccer because they love it. They play soccer because they're great at it. And I don't think my daughter, like, I'm going to repeat that to her so many times, because I don't think she understood it at the time, because she's getting this big cast on her arm and she's fascinated with that. And she's 12-year-old with ADHD. So it's like, she's all over the place. But I'm like, he's absolutely, like, I wonder how many kids, if they were told at 12 years old, make sure you find out other things you love to do, because don't just play soccer or basketball or softball, whatever it is, because you're good at it. Play it because you love it. And on the flip side of that, I wonder how many parents would accept that. Like how many, my daughters know, like I tell them all the time, the first time you come to me and say, I don't like playing, I don't love playing anymore, we're done. Let's find something else. The only thing I ask is that you finish that season. But I tell them all the time, like, you get to do what you love to do. Like there's going to be so many things as young adults and as parents that they're going to have to do that they don't want to do. Like it's going to be like, I don't know anybody who goes, April, they're like, I just love doing my taxes. Like I can't wait to do my taxes. Like there's gonna be so many things as an adult that you're going to have to do because you have to do them.
Yeah.
Like I don't want your childhood to be full of stuff that I'm forcing you to do. Mm-hmm. I want you to love doing it. So they know that all the time. So I think about that all the time now when people talk about young people playing sports. Like, are they doing it because they love it, or are they doing it because out of all these kids, they're the one that's good at it? So it's a pretty big thing to think about.
Mm-hmm.
I will tell you one thing. I do have a friend who loves doing taxes. He loves it so much. He's a tax preparer. Just wanted to point out that there is that perspective out there. Now, I'll be perfectly honest. This guy is a little weird. He really is. This guy's just a little bit off kilter, but he's a good guy. He's
March 30th. He's just like, yes, I cannot wait.
But your point is so well taken. In fact, I think it's actually a good thing that has occurred over the last, I'll say, 2 generations or so, that there's more and more emphasis on helping kids to find what they're passionate about, what they love. Not as much as I would like, but more than there used to be. That was one of my biggest problems for most of my life. I didn't even find out until I was in my mid-50s what I was passionate about. I did exactly what you talked about. My background is primarily tech. I was good at tech. I just didn't like it very much, but I was good at it, so I kept doing it for years until I finally burned out. It was one of the things that led to the crash and burn of my business in 2008. And as an interesting corollary, with the advent of AI, suddenly I liked tech for the first time in my life. I mentioned that one a few times. So you never know what's going to happen, but it really is important to find out what you love. And like you said, you can't just try one thing and know that's what you love. Because, by the way, you can love multiple things. But, many of us can't find one thing, but it turns out you can actually love a lot of things. There are a lot of things to be passionate about. And the more you're passionate about, the more full your life is.
I don't, I understand where it came from, but I don't understand why we have young people have to think that they have to grind and put in this work for like you have to pay your dues and which I listen, I get the sentiment behind it, like I understand it, but it's
I'm glad you get it. I'd like to have an explanation about it.
But it's almost like hey, you know what, like you need to go through this because I went through it or things, put in the work now, and it's like they're kids. They're absolute kids. Like when I want my kids to look back at their childhood, like, of course I want to, them to see, love and the closeness of our family. But I want them to look back and think, man, I really loved playing this, or I really loved being a part of this. Like I've talked to some kids in the past that they're like, oh, I have to go to this Scouts thing, or I have to go to this specific religious camp, or I have to go to this outdoor camp every summer. It's like, oh, do you like doing it? No, my mom makes me do it. It's like, well, why? Well, she did it when she was a kid, and it's like, okay. Like I close my I don't say anything because it's not my kid, but at the same time, like if like my kids know that if there's something that I would like them to do, like I let them talk to me like we're not responsibility equals, we're not financial equals, we're not decision making equals. I know that, they know that. However, when it comes to something that they're spending their time doing, like I want their input. I want to know if they're going to like doing it, and if it's something that they need to do and they might not love doing it, I make sure I explain the reasoning for it. I make sure I explain what the expectation and what the what I expect them to get out of it. And when they go into it understanding that, okay, well, at least dad knows how I feel, and I've heard explanation. Like, you'll never hear because I said so from me to my kids. Like, I won't say that. I just won't. I want them to enjoy their childhood.
And correct me if I'm wrong, but I mean, isn't it pretty easy to tell whether or not when your kid is doing something that they're passionate about it?
Totally.
Well, my kids, yes. my kids, yeah. Yeah, I don't see too much enthusiasm. I don't see too much enthusiasm when I ask them to put the dishes away. Like, I don't see too much. Yeah.
That's right. And there's some kids, you know, I think about, you know, some kids that are around the hemisphere, in my world, essentially. And I think it's so interesting because one that I'm thinking of in particular, she was like, oh, you know, I'd really love to, you know, like race horses and, you know, whatever, because our family used to race horses. I used to race horses when I was young, for a long time. And I sat down with her and I said, you know, it's a really cool sport. Like, you're going to go fast. It's crazy. Like, it is dangerous. You got all the adrenaline. Like, it is unlike anything I've ever experienced in my life doing that thing. And I loved it. But there's so much more than just getting in and racing. There's the getting to the show and getting the horses prepared for the show. And there's a lot of work there. You can't just jump in and go. And I said to her, I'll be there. I will help you do this. If you really want to race, if your heart is in it and you want to do it, I'm there for you. But you need to start with a summer on the farm, because there's a lot of skills that you don't have because you didn't grow up like I did on the farm. You grew up outside of the farm. And I need to know that you're serious about doing all the other work, because I've already done that in my life. And I decided it was time for me to pack up and leave that space. I didn't have the space in my life anymore for it, because there's a lot of work. But I don't want to get into a position where I'm doing all the work and then you get to do the fun part. That's not what's happening. And pretty quickly she was like, yeah. I'm like, why do you want to do it? And she's like, well, you know, it kind of sounds like it would be fun. Okay. Yeah. It is fun, but there's a lot of work too that
well, don't you also have the piece that says the work also needs to be fun?
Yes.
Because you're right, you do have to have this other work that you do. If it's going to be drudgery, what's the point?
Yeah. Well, but the thing is that the work is different to different people. For me, I love being around horses. So, you know, like exercising them, getting them into condition, seeing what they're really made of, and like watching these majestic animals run and preparing them for what's going to happen, training them to do that. All of that stuff is exciting, and being able to care for something. You know, you're caring for these animals. They're your babies. They eat before you eat. That's just the way it works. They get watered before you get watered. Like, you're not partying and hanging out and having fun. You're taking care of these massive, beautiful beings that run hard for you. So you don't have to run, essentially. You're just behind them. The work is fun, but I could see that there was a disconnect between like the whole package and the glory of doing it. You know, it's pretty glorious doing it. But it's not just a one-time thing that you could do because you're working with animals.
Yeah, I remember something that Will Ferrell once said. He said people never saw the 10 years that it took for him to become an overnight sensation.
That's right.
Yeah, exactly.
100%. Yeah. You know, and it's funny too, because I think about like my life and growing up, and I was accused when I was young by some people that were close to me that, you know, I was only racing, or I only wanted to race because, you know, that's what my dad does. My dad used to race before I was, well, I don't know. It's around the time that I was born and my brother was born. He quit because his nickname was Rollover Sheppy. So you can infer how good he was. He was a lot of dangerous wrecks. So I was like, I think you should just like hang it up. And he became the announcer. So it was something that we did all as kids. Like, if we wanted to go with dad to the races, you know, we had to learn to be quiet and sit on the barrel while he was announcing so that he could do his job and he didn't have to worry about us. But people were like, oh, you just want to do it because your dad does it. And, you know, he's pressuring you to do it. And he never pressured me, never once pressured me. And I mean, probably environment, being around the excitement, I wanted to do it. But from the time that somebody, when I was like 12 or something, let me hold the lines and drive the team. That was it. I was hooked. I knew that I was going to love it. The first time I ever went fast, I was like, this is it for me. My hands blew up like 5 times the size that they are. I have small hands, just trying to like hold them back and stop them. Like it was a mess. My body, I'm just tiny. My body was not exactly designed for this, but I made it work. It was the love of my life for a while. It was fun.
That is so cool. By the way, I learned something new about my co-host. Rollover Sheppy. I'd never known that one. That's really good.
There you go. I started to take on the title when I started to race. So
you carried on the family tradition. That's good of you.
Carried on the family tradition.
I'm sure your father appreciated that. Yeah.
Oh, yep. Absolutely.
I did. The one that I loved about that, because like there has to be that understanding that kids don't have organically without being told, but there has to be the understanding of like, we have to start to love the process. Like if you're just results based, like you're gonna find just so much pain in so many things you do. But that's what I love about, my oldest daughter. My youngest daughter, I feel she's getting that way, but my oldest daughter loves practicing. She loves training. She loves the process of it. Like when we get to a game, if she wins or loses, honestly, she's come back to me and had the same smile on her face and said, Daddy, how did I do? Win or lose, but she looks forward to practice and she looks forward to the training. And I think more people have to understand. That Will Ferrell quote is, I couldn't have said it better. It is because people, where'd this guy come from? Like, oh my goodness, like he's so funny on this. That was great. But like the amount of rejections he went through and to keep going and to hone his craft. And I look at that, when people see the finished product, like there's a reason you don't see the behind the scenes stuff, because it's not glamorous. It's not supposed to be, because it's only a subset of people can put in that work. And no one's gatekeeping it. That's the funny part. No one's gatekeeping. Yeah, right. If the amount of authors I've talked to on my show where I'm just in awe of them. Like, you started writing, you kept writing, you finished it, you edited, you got a producer or a publisher, and you put there's nothing secret about the formula to write a book. However, all you see is the hard or soft back or the audio. That's all you see. Mm-hmm. You don't see the 8 hours a day for 3 months that they sat there writing. And so people have to enjoy the process itself.
Yeah, 9 months in my case, but I know what you mean.
Yeah, not small book. I was talking about small book.
This wasn't all that long. But what you're talking about is so on the mark. It really is. And I think that for me, the biggest takeaway is not only is it important to know whether or not you love, whether or not you have passion for what it is that you're doing, but I think it's also important to understand where passion comes from. And by that, I mean, there are lots of different ways we can explain that to ourselves or to others. But what I mean by it is, where does my desire come from to continue to explore this in a way that's fun for me? That's what I mean by where does the passion come from? Because if you can't answer that question, first of all, you don't really have a passion for it. But second of all, you don't really know how you're going to get up tomorrow to do it.
Right. One of the things that I look back and it was the greatest thing for me is asking the question why, constantly asking the question why. When I wanted to get in shape, well, why? Like I said, I want to be around for my kids, and not just playing with them and being active for them. I want to be around. I want to live long enough where they have their father around. So my why kept me going. And if I ever ask somebody, like, why are you doing this? And their answer quickly is, because someone is making me, or because my dad did it, or because this person did it. That's not your why. Yeah. That's not your why. That's not even yours. Not even yours. That's just a reason you're here right now. That's all it is. But like the why has to be something almost like, I don't want to say it can't be extrinsic. It can't come from the outside, but it has to be, a lot of times it has to be intrinsic. Like, I want to be a better version of myself, but again, when you talk about passion, I think people, someone listening to this right now may out of nowhere be like, you know what, that Mark guy was on to something. I'm going to the gym tomorrow. I'm getting a therapist. I'm on this. Like, I love what he said. I am inspired. I'm passionate about this right now. And then tomorrow morning comes and the alarm goes off and like, yeah, I don't know what I was thinking. I appreciate what he's saying, but that's for him. So
it's an interesting question, though.
Yeah, but we have to create it.
Because if you wake up that way, then to me, the next question becomes, well, what do I want to do? And how often do we not go to that next question?
Correct. But the thing I always tell people is like, passion is in inspiration and motivation. They can be fleeting. Like, no one is passionate 100% of the time. Like, don't get me wrong. I love coaching. I love coaching individuals. I love coaching teams. I'm not going to sit here and tell you every Tuesday, Thursday, whatever I want it to be at that practice. I'm not going to tell you that right now. And I'm going to tell you every morning when I wake up at 4:30, I want to go to the gym in the morning. Like, I don't. But two things pop off in my head immediately. Like, am I going to be upset with myself in a couple hours? Or how will I feel after I do this thing I'm supposed to do? And first question is, yes, I will be upset. If I am not sick, if I'm not injured and I have the ability to do it, I will be upset with myself that I did not do the thing. And a few hours later, once I've done it, once I've gotten to the gym and gotten through it or gotten to the practice, like, I feel so thankful that I did it. So I kind of put myself a little further in the future and say, how will I feel in 2 hours and 3 hours if I make this specific decision? Mm-hmm. And then after I do the thing, like, my passion just floods back. But I understand passion is that it's a wave. It goes up and down, Am I passionate about certain things in my life? Yes, but not all the time. And I think people, once they understand that and they figure out, my discipline has to kick in. My discipline has to kick in, because my discipline can produce passion, but my passion can't produce discipline.
Well, plus, I mean, this is going to be different again from person to person, but I know it's going to be true of me. I'm not a gym guy, but I'm a walker. I'm a social dancer. I have lots of different kinds of things that I do. And if I'm not doing them, my body complains, mainly because my body is so used to doing them.
Yes.
So I can even wake up on a particular day and not feel like doing it. And if I stick with that pattern for a few days, my body is screaming at me.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah. That the human body is an amazing thing. It's an amazing thing. And once we get on that cycle, and once it's ready for certain movements and certain it wants it. It really, and the opposite is the same. Like, it
works both ways.
It works both ways. Yeah.
The less you do, the less you feel like doing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yes,
neuroplasticity is a wonderful thing, except when it's a total terrible thing. It works both ways. Well, this has been a fascinating conversation. I wish we had more time to do it, but we do have to kind of wrap things up a little bit here. First and foremost, just in case there happens to be somebody who's listening, who's thinking that they want to get to know this Marc guy a little bit more. I mean, I presume you welcome contact from people. I mean, how does somebody get in touch with you?
Yeah, I definitely do. And I make it really easy. You can go to my website, which is marcpaisant.com, marcpaisant.com. And that has the links to all my shows and my training and things like that. And of course, you can find me on all the socials, Paisant Fitness on Instagram, and then LinkedIn. You can just look up my name and it's amazing. Like, I know people don't mention LinkedIn a lot, but I get a lot of messages on LinkedIn, and I try to respond to all of them. And I am that person. If you send me a message and you're like, hey, I don't know who to tell this to, I've just been going through some things, and I just wanted to put some things down. I don't care if you respond or not. I'm the person that's going to respond to you. Like, I understand that feeling of not knowing who to talk to or what to say or how to say it. Like, even if you just put hello ... like, I will respond to that, because I just want to make sure people are heard and their feelings are validated.
Well, that's also kind of a thing about LinkedIn, because the other ones, you got like X, you got Facebook, you got all the different varieties of social media out there. You got the TikToks and so forth. They all have their niches, but LinkedIn specifically is more than any of the others. That's for one-to-one contact.
Yes.
It's just the way it's organized, the way
Mhm.
it was originally thought out. So I can see why you gravitate to it in the first place. And then also why, if you're going to be active on LinkedIn, that's the way to be active, right?
Yeah.
Those
Oh, yeah.
one-on-one conversations.
I agree. I've had, I've had some success with some other stuff. I'll go ahead and say it out loud. Like TikTok is not my thing. Like I have an account, but I will leave that to the kids that I yell at in my yard when I'm outside. But if that shows my age, then it is what it is. Like I don't care. But TikTok is just, it can be fun, but I don't understand. Like I will say that out loud.
That's honest of you. I mean, I understand it. I don't care. That's my problem.
I don't know if that's a problem. I don't know if that's a problem.
It may be a solution. I'm not sure, really. I mean, Jody Lynn, do you care? I mean,
I watch like long form content on TikTok, which is not what it's supposed to be. So.
Yeah, correct. You're absolutely right. Like TikTok was created because of the 8 second, or it took over for Vine, basically. Yeah. So, and now it's like you can record up to 10 minutes. And I'm just like,
right. Wow.
What are we doing here?
Oh my God,
yeah, wow. I watch the 10-minute videos and then I have to remind myself, oh shoot, I should probably just go to YouTube because somebody robbed this creator of this and made a TikTok.
Yes.
Probably because they didn't have time with all the production and stuff.
Yeah,
so right. I remind myself halfway through the video, I should just go find the YouTube version on their channel.
That's so funny. I love that.
Yeah.
The second thing that we like to do as we wrap up a show is I'd like to go to Jody Lynn to literally wrap up the show. I mean, she's the one who kind of ties the whole thing together because, I mean, you can tell what kind of contributor she is. I don't know if you noticed, she's also a consummate note taker. So like she is the person to go to if you want to know what the high points are. So Jody Lynn, what are today's high points?
Oh my goodness. I feel like we traveled a big loop and then came back, and I'll kind of explain. We were talking at the beginning, Mark, you were saying that, you just wanted to feel normal and just like happy like these other people that you see. And I think as we got into our conversation, the realization that I have, and I have for a long time, is, as society, or within our society, we have these boxes that we're told you just check the box and then you will be happy. And your podcast so beautifully named, normal, relatively normal. I also think you had said normal is relative. I think happy is relative. And I think that we're, blinded, or we're, we got cross-threaded in our society of what actually happy is. And often we go to this plastic happy place. When I check the box, then I will be happy. And I think our whole conversation really today was about empowering, the youth, the individuals, really everyone that's listening to this conversation, giving them the authority to decide, what do I want to do? What does make me happy? And it's so incredible to see that you've created this safe space for kids to learn that happiness is an opportunity, is a choice, is a pathway in their life, instead of just checking the box, work hard, get a job here, get a pension, that's what a lot of kids are taught. You just have to do this, what you're good at. And we're so missing that point of what brings you happiness, what brings you joy. And we all know that you can't be happy 24/7. We've said that enough inside of this podcast, but following that joy, following the passion that you have, as well as the things that you're good at, and learning those skills is so incredibly beautiful. And I love that you're giving kids the permission to go after what they love to do, because I think that that's a skill that will ripple out into the rest of society to teach them the same thing. And it's a lesson that we need to hear. So thank you, Mark.
You are an amazing note taker. I'll get well, did not do you justice. Very good. I appreciate that.
Thank you.
Isn't it nice to know you're really listened to? I mean, it feels good.
That is. Yes, it does. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Well, it touches on something that I always like to wrap things up with, because I noticed this a few years back. Now that we're in this wonderful 21st century, where you're in Atlanta, Georgia, I'm in Connecticut, she's in Alberta, Canada, and we're talking in each other's living room. I mean, that was not possible 30 years ago. Today, it's every day. It's incredible. But along with that, we were listing some of the different ways that people do outreach, particularly those who are trying to give back, like you do, like Jody Lynn does, like I do, like other guests on the program do. We try to find ways to reach out and give to people and help them to live better lives, and perhaps avoid some of the pitfalls we avoided or didn't avoid and learn from after we came through them. In the process of doing that, though, we also end up putting out a lot of content and not seeing how the content actually affects other lives. Often we do, but very often we don't see it. And we have a tendency not to appreciate it. That's what I noticed. And I thought, we should do something about that. So Mark, on behalf of those people you've never met, never seen, and never will meet, and never will see, but you've been helping in ways you didn't even know about because you're sharing your message, on their behalf, thank you for what you're doing, because you are making a difference in this world.
I appreciate that. Thank you so much for having me on. This has been an amazing conversation. I've really enjoyed it.
We've enjoyed it too. This has been great. Thank you for sharing your story. Yeah, keep doing what you're doing. You're doing some good stuff there.
Thank you.
So thank you very much. Thank you to our podcast listeners everywhere. We will see you all next time here on LOA Today. Goodbye, everybody.